It's 1:14 a.m. You told yourself you'd stop at 10, then 11, then midnight. But here you are, thumb still moving, eyes burning, mind spiraling through videos you didn't choose, and somehow can't stop watching. You're not weak. You're not lazy. You're not even bored. You are trapped inside one of the most sophisticated psychological systems ever engineered, and it was built specifically for people like you. The average person will spend 11 years of their life scrolling through social media. 11 years, more time than most of us spend on any single relationship, career, or personal project. And yet almost nobody chose this. Nobody sat down at age 20 and said, "I'd like to surrender a decade to a feed algorithm." So how did it happen? To understand the trap, you have to understand the bait. And the bait isn't the content. The bait is a single chemical. Dopamine is the brain's anticipation molecule, not pleasure, anticipation. The neurologist Robert Sapolsky spent decades studying this distinction. What he found changes everything. Your brain releases dopamine not when you get the reward, but in the moment before, the moment of maybe, the slot machine moment, the pull of the handle before the wheels spin. Social media apps are engineered around exactly this mechanism. Every scroll is a pull of the handle. Every refresh is a spin of the wheels. Will this post get likes? Will someone have replied? Will the next video be the one that finally satisfies the feeling that never quite arrives? The answer is always almost, and almost is the most addictive reward schedule ever discovered. In behavioral psychology, this is called a variable ratio reinforcement schedule. It's the same principle that makes gambling so devastating, and it was studied in the 1950s by B.F. Skinner, using nothing more than a lever and a hungry pigeon. When rewards come randomly, not every time, but sometimes, animals will press the lever compulsively, long past hunger, long past reason. Skinner called it the most powerful conditioning schedule ever observed. 60 years later, it became the blueprint for every app on your phone. But the dopamine explanation misses something crucial. Plenty of people use social media without losing hours to it every night. What separates the casual user from the person who can't stop? The answer, according to a landmark 2019 study from the University of Pennsylvania, is loneliness. And not just the loneliness people are aware of. The deep, low-grade loneliness that doesn't feel like loneliness at all. It just feels like being online. Psychologist John Cacioppo, who spent 3 decades at the University of Chicago studying loneliness, made a discovery that most people are not ready to hear. Lonely people don't just feel lonely. Their nervous systems change. Chronic loneliness activates a threat response in the brain, the same threat response triggered by physical danger. The body interprets social isolation as life-threatening, because for most of human evolution, it was. In that threat state, the brain becomes hypervigilant for social connection. It scans constantly for signs of belonging, of recognition, of being seen. And it becomes far more sensitive to any stimulus that mimics those signals, even artificial ones, like a notification, like a like the warm, hollow feeling of scrolling through other people's lives and existing briefly in the same digital space as another human being. The neuroscience is unambiguous. Social media triggers the same neural reward circuits as real human connection. The same circuits. Your brain, in its ancient architecture, cannot reliably distinguish between a warm conversation with a friend and 200 strangers pressing a heart-shaped button. Both release oxytocin. Both reduce cortisol. Both briefly, pharmacologically, silence the loneliness alarm. Briefly. Because here is the trap within the trap. Unlike real connection, digital connection doesn't satisfy the need. It mimics satiation without providing it. The neurological equivalent of eating food that has no nutritional value. You consume it, You feel temporarily less empty, and then the genuine hunger returns stronger. The loop tightens, the scrolling accelerates, and the platforms know this. Not because they are evil, but because they follow the data. Every time a user opens the app, every scroll, every pause, every replay is fed back into a recommendation engine whose only optimization target is time on platform. The algorithm discovered what psychologists later confirmed: lonely people use apps longer, engage more intensely, and return more frequently. Loneliness is not a side effect of the design, it is the entire business model. In 2018, the American Psychological Association published research showing that adolescents who spent 5 or more hours a day on social media were 66% more likely to have at least one suicide risk factor than those who spent 1 hour. But the truly disturbing finding wasn't the correlation, it was the mechanism. The more time people spent consuming social connection, the lonelier they became. The cure was making the disease worse. This is the paradox that sits at the heart of modern loneliness. We have never been more connected, and we have never been lonelier. In 2020, Cigna's Global Loneliness Index found that over half of Americans reported sometimes or always feeling alone. In the UK, the numbers were nearly identical. Australia, Japan, Germany, the same. A global epidemic, invisible to everyone experiencing it, spreading through the same networks built to cure it. So what breaks the loop? This is where most conversations about phone addiction fail. They prescribe willpower alone. Cold turkey. A dopamine detox. Delete the apps. What the neuroscience actually shows is more nuanced and more hopeful than any of that. A 2022 study from Stanford University found that reducing social media use by just 30 minutes a day, not eliminating it, just reducing, produced measurable improvements in loneliness scores within 2 weeks. Not because the participants suddenly had richer social lives, but because the reduction in false signal noise allowed the brain's social circuitry to recalibrate, to start distinguishing between real hunger and artificial flavor. The more powerful intervention, however, isn't subtraction, it's substitution. Cacioppo's research consistently showed that what disrupts the loneliness loop is not the absence of social media, it's the presence of something that delivers what social media only mimics. Eye contact, physical presence, a conversation where both people are genuinely uncertain how it will end, unscripted, unoptimized, real. The antidote to the dopamine trap isn't less stimulation, it is real stakes. There is a version of your life in which the phone is a tool and not a refuge, in which loneliness, when it appears, is treated as useful information rather than an emergency to be numbed, in which the 11 years are returned, spent on the messy, unpredictable, unoptimized, irreplaceable business of being present with another human being. But here's what I want to know, and I'm genuinely asking. When you scroll late at night, what are you actually looking for? Not the content, the feeling, because I don't think it's entertainment. I think it's the same thing all of us are looking for at 1 a.m. when the room is quiet and the phone is still glowing. Something that says, "You're not the only one." Leave it in the comments. Read everyone. Because if you're watching this, you're probably not as alone as the algorithm wants you to think.